Mad Max was the turnout of my lifestyle. Smoking green, blowing white clouds to build the blue skies. Conversating with the gods by my wildflower to let them know that it's the God's hour. This love's the never-ending saga. Gods by my wildflower to let them know that it's the God's hour. This love's the never-ending saga. Gods by my wildflower to let them know that it's the God's hour. This love's the never-ending saga. Gods by my wildflower to let them know that it's the God's hour. This love's the never-ending saga. Walk through the sands of times like Gara. On the other side of that gad is karma. You wet Prada, the devil like inside your box now. While the angels fly over my headstone.
We are back with another episode of the God's Hour podcast with your boy Big Serbs. That was Presley in the background. You know, he loves to interrupt the podcast whenever he can. Episode numero 48. Yes, 48. The champ is here. The champ is here. And we have a special guest, a very special guest, a returning guest, might I add. Who are you, sir?
Hello, everybody in TV land.
It's the return of King Louie, everybody. I wish I had the little...
That's claps. Correct.
The claps and everything. Yes. So in the previous episode, we had talked about just, a real general, your life, how you grew up, politics, a very brief synopsis of what your life has entailed thus far. Mm-hmm. But for this episode, I wanted to focus on a specific person, one person that I know has been kind of like a big... in our lives, we have prevalent figures, your mother, your father, a cousin, in this case, an uncle. And your uncle, I think he'd be like my granduncle or something like that. I don't know how the white people say it, but he's my Theo, he's your Theo, Theo Willie.
That's correct.
And what is his full name?
Guillermo Soria.
Awesome. And what is your earliest memory of Theo Willie?
Well, Guillermo Soria, Theo Willie, otherwise known as Champ, from his neighborhood by the name of White Fence in Los Angeles, specifically Boyle Heights. He was my uncle, and he basically looked out for me while I was a little boy growing up in Boyle Heights. And he was involved with, like I said, the local neighborhood gang element.
The gang element or the gang elements?
All the above.
Of course. So, what is your earliest memory of Theo Willie, Pop?
Well, earliest memory of Theo Willie was just growing up in the family, and he was always basically looking out for me and all the younger generations of family, but specifically me, because I was the oldest of the family, and as far as the children. So he was probably about 9 or 10 years older than me. So I'm talking about maybe, so when I was like, say, 5, he was already like 14, 15, and so on and so forth. You could do the math. So we lived in Boyle Heights all the way up until I was in 3rd grade. 3rd grade, that puts us like in 1975. So my memories in 1975, I was like probably about 8 years old at that point. So he could have been about 17, 18 years old at the time. So at that time, 18 years old, he was already a main figure in the White Fence Gang with his friends, or gang member associates that they grew up with in the neighborhood. So they ran the streets, and whatever was white fence territory, they controlled it. And basically, he was running deep with that gang activity. And by him doing that, he basically was looking out for me because he didn't want me involved. So the ironic thing is he was involved but didn't want me involved. But that's basically the irony of life.
Damn. So there was like no way like he would encourage you to even be a part of his neighborhood or anything of that nature. But would he have you around? Like would he actually like have you around the neighborhood and shit?
I knew several of his friends or homies, which I known through the years growing up. But I knew who they were. They knew me. They knew who I was. You know, they knew who my uncle was, and they were all friends, homies from the same neighborhood. So, you know, he took me around his friends just to go hang out. But they all knew who I was, and for the most part, for the ones that were his really close friends or homeboys, you know, they knew me and I knew them. So it was a mutual, you know, friendship because of my Tio Willie.
And did he actually tell you, like, I don't want you to be a part of like what we got going on as far as like the gang, the neighborhood? Did he make it like a point to let you know that I don't want you to be involved?
Yeah, once in a long time he would, but for the most part it was implied, meaning, you know,
he didn't outright say it.
He didn't outright say it, but meaning that he would only bring me around when he was just like kind of like hanging out with his buddies, having a good time every once in a long while. When everything was like cool to bring me along, he would bring me along. But for the most part, it was all implied that he would just have me around because it was just, you know, being with his friends, hanging out, having a good time. And he could have, you know, I was safe around them. But when things got deeper, then, you know, I wouldn't see him for quite some time.
And how active was he in his neighborhood?
Well, everybody in his neighborhood knew who he was. He basically was in it for the whole time we lived in Boyle Heights, which was years. And he grew up being a part of the White Fence Gang, which basically became his family, his extended family. And I think for the most part, at certain times, it kind of like it was his family, because he kind of like everyone goes through, they choose the gang life and the gang family over, you know, your real family members, you know, depending on how deep you get in the neighborhood.
So do you think that's actually what happened with him? Like, he just got so embedded in his neighborhood that like his neighborhood became more of his family, and it kind of pushed him from his real family into the neighborhood. Is that like kind of what it was with him?
Yeah, at times, not on full-time basis, but at times. And you'd see him come around, and then he'd be gone for a while, and then he'd come back. And but for the most part, you know, when he was out and about, it wasn't for a long time, but he was pretty busy, you know, hanging out with his neighborhood family, so to speak.
And would this be like the days he wasn't coming around? Would it be like days, months, weeks?
No, we're talking about just days, you know, from what I could remember. It could have been weeks, but what I remember, it was just days.
So it wasn't like you know, where some gang members, they would like the gang is their life. Like it's 24/7. They're living in the hood. They only hang around their friends. Like that wasn't the case with him.
No, because he'd always, for the most part, come home. But he was always out and about, with his friends, with his homies. But he would make it a point to be home most of the time, But it takes the neighborhood life, and the homies basically take priority at the time over your regular family.
And how was your relationship like with him? Like, was it more of like a brother, bigger brother? Was he kind of like a father figure? Like, what was he? What was your like? Because obviously that's your tío.
Yeah, he's my uncle. I looked at him like he feels like an older brother. But he had, in several conversations with him, he told me that he would look out to me, for me, like, like if I was his son, like he wanted the best for me, and he didn't want me to get involved. So he always looked out for me. So he kind of looked out for me, like if, kind of like a big brother / father figure, because he didn't want, he knew what the neighborhood life was about, and he basically didn't want that for me or any other, family member, which was basically, the younger generation, because I was the oldest of the younger generation coming up in my family.
That's cool. Do you think he kind of like wanted to make his presence known in the neighborhood so well that he would like almost in a sense protect the how do I say it? Like he wanted to be a prevalent figure so no one would mess with his family, and like let people know like I'm champ, and like you don't fuck with like my family type shit.
Well, yeah, everyone knew who Champ was. Everybody knew what the Champ basically would do anything and everything for his neighborhood. But then again, everybody knew from the neighborhood where he lived, who his family was. So yeah, they would come around, for visit, and around our home. Because you got to remember, my grandmother lived right next door to us. So it was basically my parents' home and in my grandma's home, they were basically next door neighbors. We were next door neighbors with my grandmother. So at the time, that's who my Uncle Willie lived with. And, I got to see him a lot growing up in the neighborhood right there. So he basically, everyone knew who he was, where he lived. So we didn't have anything come down or any craziness come into because we lived in an alley. So the only people that came through the alley was either other homies or the neighbors that lived in the back homes. Or when it got crazy at night, the LAPD would swoop down and the patrol cars would race through the alley to get to the other side of the other streets on the other side of the alley.
Now, we're talking about the late 60s, early 70s.
No, we're talking about mid-70s.
Okay, mid-70s. How active was the neighborhood at the time? Would it be like at least one member per household or block or average? Like how like roughly do you think at like the neighborhood was active, like membership wise, through like either households or blocks?
No, I can't tell you, how many members for each household. It's just the gang. They controlled the area, and you could see them out and about in the streets, hanging out, walking around, or just being in their homes where they all would hang out in different homes. So you would see that. And it's not that like the whole entire Boyle Heights had families that were gang members, but a lot of them did. And it wasn't just White Fence, it was just Boyle Heights. In that area of Boyle Heights in Los Angeles, there wasn't one gang. There was many, many, many gangs. It was basically, there was boundaries that cut through Boyle Heights, that there was different gangs. So you could only say, for example, your gang controlled probably, could have been 3, 4, 5 square miles. And then you go over the next street and that's basically controlled by a different gang. And that gang might control a few miles or maybe 5 blocks. And depending on how big the gang was, the bigger the gang, the bigger the territory, the smaller the gang, they could just be from one street. And that's where they stayed, within that one street. But for the most part, in the mid-'70s, there was lots of gangs activity. And it was even hard to walk, say, like, if you lived in the neighborhood, if your school happened to be in the neighborhood, you lived in the neighborhood, then you're okay. But if you looked a certain way, dressed a certain way, and people from the neighborhood didn't know you, then you would get checked by basically, somebody like the typical "where are you from?" question. So, and there, depending on your answer, you either, continued walking or you get basically beat up. So.
And that's how LA kind of still is, right? Like, LA is the gang capital of the world. I don't know if there's still like 2,000 gangs, but when people think of like the Crips and the Bloods, I feel like a lot of them think like, oh, it's like all these, like it's one big Crip gang that controls, South Central. It's one big Blood gang that controls Inglewood. What they don't understand is these gangs are controlling a very small area, and we're not talking about one, we're talking about maybe 2,000 gangs that control many sections of a street, fucking cities, and from what you're saying, that's how it was just in Boyle Heights. Like in Boyle Heights, how many gangs do you think there were just in the mid-'70s?
I can count them. There's a lot of them in Boyle Heights, and
like 5 to 10.
If you went east from Boyle Heights, and you went into East LA, now there's even lots more. So, it was many gangs throughout Boyle Heights, East LA. But I'm sticking with Boyle Heights because that's where I grew up.
Man, that's crazy to even like think about. So as far as like having like enemies and stuff, would there be other gangs that were clicked up with White Fence or were cool? Like you could end up in another neighborhood and be like, "Where you from?" "Oh, I'm from this side," and they'd be like, "Oh, we're cool with you guys." Like, was it like that? Like, if you remember, or if you know.
No, I don't know specifically, but for the most part, everybody in those days
claimed their own.
Basically stuck to their own neighborhood, their own boundaries, so to speak. So, because everybody is so overprotective and controlling of their neighborhood, so
they don't really want to be friends with anybody.
No one wants to share. No one wants to be friends because, the next street over equals the next gang over, and and they're your enemies basically.
And how did Theo Willie get the name Champ? Do you know?
Well, Theo Willie got the name Champ because he never backed down. He was in deep, meaning he basically was down for the neighborhood. He basically go toe to toe with anybody and did whatever he had to do, and he basically proved himself. Was a good fighter, and that's where the name Champ came from, because he never backed down. He always was moving forward, in the whatever he had to do, whether it be fighting somebody or basically doing anything that the neighborhood required.
And he was known for that. Like, he was known for, like, going one-on-one with the hands, fisticuffs, as, they would say.
Yeah, exactly. Because, how else are you going to get that
reputation,
that name and reputation? So, you get it from, there's a reason for you get your nickname, and that was the reason. He basically never backed down from a fight, and he basically took care of business.
Did he ever tell you, like, when he first joined the gang, or like how it happened or anything like that?
No, he never told me the specifics, but I think it was just the neighborhood kids that he ended up befriending, and they were part of the gang. And because you got to remember, in those days, the gang life was generational. They had their fathers or
their grandfathers
parents were in it, and their grandfathers were in it, so it was generational. And you can have a whole household of about 3 generations that were all claiming the same neighborhood. Or sometimes the crazy part is there was some households with 3 generations of family members that had within the family, they claim different neighborhoods. So that's real interesting too.
Yeah, I never really wondered myself, like, how does that work? Like, especially if like you're from enemy neighborhoods and shit like that, like, how do the cookouts and family reunions go? You're just like,
they don't have that much contact, or
very minimal,
even though they're family. So everyone stays, put where they're at. But that does happen, and that does exist. Within family members, claim different gang affiliations.
That's fucking, I mean, to me, I don't think, like, I could never really, like, get that, like, fully understand that. But, I mean, I think when you're from a neighborhood and then your little cousin or your nephew or whatever is from somewhere else, an enemy neighborhood or something, I think there needs to be like some sort of dialogue, like, you know what I mean? Like, because this isn't really like some normal shit. Like, it's really like a LA thing, which I feel most people that aren't from LA especially don't really understand. It's kind of like, well, like, if you would be from one, like, this gang, you would be, you would think everyone else in your family would be from the same gang, right?
Yeah, you would think so, but that's not always the case. Maybe the majority are from the same gang, if they're gang members at all. I'm not saying everybody automatically is a gang member, because that's not the case. But a lot of family members stick together, and they're from the same neighborhood. There's always a few oddballs that want to go against the grain, so they end up with claiming a different neighborhood. So,
do you think you would have ever been white fence if you never moved?
No, because I had my parents didn't want that life for me, so I'm pretty sure they would steer me away from that. So much so that they didn't want that from us, and they wanted a better life for us. So that's the reason we moved from Boyle Heights in 1975, from Boyle Heights to the city of Cudahy. And I was in 3rd grade at the time, and I remember that vividly. And that was one of the main reasons, was to, one, leave the neighborhood and that, unsafe, environment, which was nothing. There was nothing good about growing up in a gang-infested neighborhood. It's actually dangerous, depending on what's happening at the time in the neighborhood. So my parents ended up buying a home in the city of Cudahy, and that afforded us the opportunity to move away into a safer city, although the city of Cudahy also had gangs within that city or near the city of Cudahy. So we basically went from one neighborhood and moved into another at the time.
Yeah, because when you said you moved from Boyle Heights to Cudahy, I mean, shit, you might as well be talking about moving from the fucking Crips to the Bloods, because it's like, Cudahy's not that far from Boyle Heights. You know, I mean, on the map, it might be a little bit further away, but...
Yeah, it's probably about 10, 11 miles away.
Yeah, which is not really that far. Like, but I get, like, at the time you're trying to move, I would just assume, in my grandma's mind, it was a lot better than what the fuck was going on already in Boyle Heights to move to Cudahy.
Yeah, it was a lot better. Plus, we moved into our own home at the time. So when we lived in Boyle Heights, we didn't own the home. We were renting. So it was huge for us and for our family to move into our own home.
Was that the same home that Theo Mago lives over there?
No.
No? It was a different... Is that Southgate? Is that a complete different...
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, we talking about Cudahy, those houses that you pick up the... So which house did you guys stay in?
We lived in the front house. On that property, there was 4 homes. The biggest house was the first house in the front on the street side.
And that's the house that you actually grew up in?
That's the house we moved into. That was our house. And then there was 3 little homes. There's still 3 homes in the back.
And it's so funny because I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago or some shit like that, we went over there and the fucking cops had the street blocked off and shit. Mm-hmm. So we couldn't even...
Well, they had Walker Street blocked off right there on Clara Street. And what Walker Street is a cul-de-sac. It's a dead-end street. But all that's in that cul-de-sac is just apartment buildings. So it's just apartment buildings side by side that fill up that entire street, which is a dead end. And it's always had members of the local gang that live in those apartments. So there's always stuff going on there. Hence that's why they had the street blocked off with the police cruisers out there.
Because something obviously happened. Mm-hmm. And was that something you would also see too in Cudahy, like growing up there? Like, where was it? Like, how active do you think it was compared to Boyle Heights?
Well, it was basically as active as Boyle Heights because, when we moved into Cudahy in 75, you had, just like in Boyle Heights where we lived, White Fence controlled the area where we lived, but where the area where we moved, it was basically now controlled by 18th Street. So we went from one neighborhood, moved into the next neighborhood. So
you literally moved into like enemy territory.
Well, yeah, but like I said, we weren't, into that lifestyle and never was a part of it. So
no, I know, but
basically it didn't affect us.
Yeah. Because you guys weren't active members of any sort. So what I'm trying to tell the audience and shit is so I'm not gonna get too into it, but White Fence is not, they don't get along at all with 18th Street. And the crazy part is that had you been encouraged to be from White Fence and then you did move while you were claiming White Fence, it would have been a whole lot of bullshit for you to have to go through living in Cudahy while trying to claim another neighborhood, which happens all the time with people moving and claiming a hood and ending up in another neighborhood.
That's just reality of life. It happens.
And it doesn't end well a lot of the times for them.
Well, you just, have to face the consequences of claiming a different neighborhood as far as where you live.
You'd have to live like a sleeper cell. You'd have to be like fucking incognito and shit.
Yeah. That or move back to where you came from.
Oh man, not really much of an option. Not really much choices you have once you.
Yeah, that's true.
Once you get into that life, where should we bounce to? Got a few more things. What were like some of the best and worst experiences that you experienced growing up, either from Boyle Heights or Cudahy?
Well, just those experiences of just being a kid, just riding the skateboards, riding the bicycles, playing baseball in the front yard. Sometimes you hit that ball and that baseball fling over to the neighbor's house, break the window, or hit a passing car or whatever. And the fun part was you hit somebody's car as they're driving by with the baseball, and then everybody just scatters. everyone disappears. Or just building ramps and jumping the ramps with a bicycle. Laying a few brothers underneath a ramp and jumping the brothers with the bicycle.
Old school. That's what I always try to like convey in these episodes that we do, like, cause I feel like I caught the tail, the end of all that, riding your bikes outside, fucking yourself up, falling off of shit, playing imaginary games and shit, tag, things like that, which I feel like the kids don't really do anymore. I mean, I see kids play outside, but it's just different, you know what I mean?
No, before, you just, whatever you had available, that's what you used to have fun, and it was fun, You played baseball with a stick and an aluminum can, or a stick and freaking rocks, or a stick and if you had a tennis ball, man, you're doing great. That was good. That was a good baseball there. A football, toss around the football. Even in the mud, tackle each other in the mud. That's fun,
Mud fights.
Yeah, you throw mud balls at each other, the mud clogs.
You would hope a big ass rock wasn't in one of those things, because you'll fuck yourself up so bad.
If it was, and someone, it hit them too hard, they'll start crying or something. But oh well, it's just fun, or just the regular marbles, Kids nowadays don't play marbles. Don't have no idea what marbles are, but
they don't.
And nobody I think nowadays wants to roll around in the dirt and get dirty and play marbles, because
it's an issue.
To me, that's fun, but for the kids nowadays, I don't think they want to do that.
You hear the parents now too. Don't do that. You're gonna get dirty. It's kind of like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
People don't even have marble jars anymore. Going back to that. Like kids today don't know what a fucking marble jar is. A lava lamp.
Yeah, that's true.
Was that you? I think my dog's snoring over there.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, Presley, I love him to death.
Okay. He's dreaming. He's dreaming these Boyle Heights. Playing marbles.
That's funny. Oh, man. Okay, so at some point, Theo Willie, he was, I don't know what, I've heard this story maybe like 2 different times, but at some point he was shot. Mm-hmm. And can you give me the like background of what you know or what happened? Because what I heard was like he was like somewhere in an alley or something, like behind like a restaurant or something, and I guess someone banged on him or something. He said where he was from, and they...
No, what actually happened is that him and one of his homies were walking in the neighborhood, and what it was is they were crossing right in front of the driveway of a restaurant, like a Mexican restaurant.
Oh, that's what it was.
And what happened is a car basically pulled in right in front of them, like pulled in really close as they were, walking, by the restaurant, trying to just, minding their own business, walking in front of the business on the sidewalk. But just so happened, as they got to the driveway of the restaurant, a car pulled up in front of them and almost hit them, and pulled in and parked in the parking lot of the restaurant. So, that didn't go too well for my Uncle Willie. So what happened was they went after the guy, and they got trash cans. They were throwing it at his car, and they wanted to pull him out of his car to, I guess, teach him a lesson or beat his ass, or whatever the case may be, or just give him a good beat down. And what happened is, it just so happened he was the owner of that restaurant.
Oh shit.
And what happened is, because he was the owner of the restaurant, he was packing a 45, which they didn't know, and they weren't packing anything. They just wanted to beat his ass at the time. So what he did is he pulled out his gun and started firing at them, and he shot his friend in the leg. His friend Eddie, who goes by the name of Duke, Eddie got shot, and Duke got shot in the leg, and my Uncle Willie got shot 3 times. He got shot once in the arm and twice in the neck. The 2 bullets to the neck are the ones that caused him to become a quadriplegic. So after that, he ended up not being able to walk, basically not have any feeling from his chest down. He couldn't walk. He couldn't, it was pretty, devastating, because here he is. He's probably like 20 years old at the most. And now, he's going through surgeries to save his life, surgeries to rehabilitate him, to learn how to basically forget about walking, because at that time, those bullets severed his spinal cord. So like I said, from the chest down, he didn't have movement. Even his hands, he couldn't fully grasp with his hands. He could barely grasp a little bit, and very limited movement from his upper body. Although it was pretty good from his from his chest up. He had good movement. He could still move side to side from his waist up, but from his waist down, he lost the ability of his legs. And being in a wheelchair, that's now a reality for. Could you imagine any 20-year-old now ending up in a wheelchair? With the bullets still. They never removed the bullets in his neck because for fear of him dying from the actual extraction of the bullets. So they stayed in him. He was lucky enough to survive, and they left the bullets, at least one, because of the location of where it was at.
It would have been too much of a risk for them to pull him out.
Yeah. So he went through the whole rehabilitation, physical therapy. It took years. He was in the hospital for years and years and years, and then ended up, when he got shot, ended up in the White Memorial Hospital, which is in Boyle Heights, in General Hospital, back and forth from General Hospital, White Memorial, for years and years and years, doing different surgeries, just to at first stabilize him, save his life, and then after that, trying to see if he could get some movement back. But he never got movement back in his legs or his hands. But he ended up in the city of Downey at a rehabilitation facility that's not there anymore, but he used to go by the name of Rancho Los Amigos, which was a huge rehabilitation facility with doctors and physical therapists and specialists that dealt with spinal cord injuries. And you would see people there that just in wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, people that just couldn't walk, couldn't function normally, and everybody with spinal cord injuries or gunshot wounds ended up in Rancho Los Amigos to try to either gain some of their mobility or try to learn how to walk again or learn how to move again, or maybe not to the level they normally were, like fully capable of moving 100%, but maybe, gaining, 10, 20% of mobility. Anything is better than no movement, no mobility. So, but for Uncle Willie, after he got shot, he ended up in that wheelchair, and that was it. Became a paraplegic, quadriplegic / limited quadriplegic because of his limited mobility on his hands. So, but that was pretty bad because I remember visiting him in Rancho Los Amigos. A lot of family members basically spent the weekend there with him, and he was there for, it seemed like years, but it could have been a span of maybe a year and a half or whatever it was, until he was able to get rehabilitated, doing with all the physical therapy to get him strong enough to go home. So that's from there he went home. But this took years of being in different hospitals, years, and being in Rancho Los Amigos. Physical therapy and just doctors trying to stabilize him. Because for a lot of time too, he had a trach in his neck. So they had to hook him up to clear his lungs out from the phlegm, because sometimes he ended up being in a ventilator or respirator when he really, in the beginning, he was on ventilators and respirators because he wasn't going to make it. But he pulled through. Thank God he pulled through. And it took a long time, but he did. But he ended up in that wheelchair after that. So that's a sad reality, from getting shot. And that's, he was lucky because he could have been killed instantly, but, that wasn't God's plan at the time, so thank God he basically, from my calculations, he got shot when he was 20 years old, and he lasted 16 years in that wheelchair because he passed away when he was 36 years from basically of complications of, being in that wheelchair and his health. So, but he lasted 16 years after that. He passed away at 36.
And did they give him like an expectancy? Like you can only live...
No, there was no life expectancy, but in the beginning they didn't know if he was going to make it because it was pretty severe.
Yeah, I mean, you get hit 3 times with a 45. We're not talking about a pellet gun. I mean, a 45 is some serious firepower to get hit with, no matter where you get hit.
Yeah, that's right. But he was really fortunate. I mean, he was basically the luckiest man at that moment in time, because he could have instantly been killed.
Right there
and then. But he lasted 16 years. But, unfortunately, it was 16 years in a wheelchair, which is not, that's not a good life. But at least he was alive.
So what happened with the dude who shot him? Like, y'all didn't press charges or any of that
shit? It went to trial, and basically... it took however long it took, a year or more to go through the trial and all that. But the man was a business owner. He had basically a permit to carry his gun. So he felt threatened at the time, and he used it. So I don't think he did any time or anything. It was kind of like he claimed self-defense, and
what the fuck is that?
I don't think he did any time at all. The only time he did was going back and forth to court for whatever it was, a year.
they'd fucking give you like attempted murder now.
Yeah, but this was in the late 70s.
Oh my god! And he was Chicano too, or what's the story when he was a white dude?
No, I think he was I don't know. I think he was a Mexican guy. I don't know, but I really don't know. But I know he was the owner of that restaurant.
What a fucking fag, yo! Like, that's kind of the thing that gets me. Like, so someone, you know, if someone threatens you, someone to beat you up and shit, I'm not gonna argue you pull a piece on them, but to shoot, to keep shooting and shoot at people who aren't packing nothing, that just lets me know you're scared. Well, you know what I mean? Like you're scared. Like you just like a fucking shook ass little girl is what I feel.
Yeah, but at the time, you know, it was it just happened. That's how that guy reacted, and he had a gun. So I mean, that's going to happen. You know, if somebody feels threatened, they have a gun, and they're going to use it. Unfortunately, Uncle Willie and Eddie went by the name of Duke. They didn't have a gun at the time because they were just minding their own business, walking through that side of the neighborhood, and just ended up
wrong place, wrong time.
Just the bad timing with this guy pulling up right in front of them, almost hitting them. And it went, and that's all it took. Because I'm pretty sure my Uncle Willie got pretty upset. He got pissed off and went after this guy. And when he went after this guy, the guy, got scared. He at the time thought, I'm fearing my life. So he pulled out his gun. He started shooting.
What a bitch, yo. I just want to go on record. Whoever shot my Theo Willie, you're a bitch. You know what I mean? Any fucking, when you go to any FSC, for anybody who doesn't know, FSC stands for Fire Safety Course. They fucking pretty much give you the whole rundown. I'm sure in the 70s, there wasn't really much regulations as there are now as far as the gun laws and shit. But I mean, in any case, it's kind of like, I think it's just really unfortunate that, and there's still shit that happens today where people fucking get shot over no reason, or the fucking cops choke some dude to death and shit like that. And I feel like it's just due to poor management and lack of knowledge when it comes to owning a gun, because it's not a fucking super soaker. You don't got a water gun. You know what I mean? This is something that could take a life. This is something that last resort, the last measure or whatever. You know what I mean? The two dudes coming up to you, I don't give a fuck if they have baseball bats. Your life is threatened to a certain extent.
Yeah, but
and that doesn't enable you to start shooting. Like, unless someone's shooting at you or pulls a gun on you, then I understand it.
Yeah, but it just happened at that moment in time. It just happened. The guy feared for his life. Whoever that person is, I have no idea who it is. That person feared for his life, and he figured, man, it's two guys against one. He had a gun and he used it. That's basically what it came down to.
What a fag. And not in a homosexual sense.
And the thing is, the unfortunate part is, that changed Theo Willie's entire life, obviously, because now, the obvious thing is he can't walk. He'll never walk. He never did walk after that. There was not even a hope for him of ever walking. Yeah, the doctors and physical therapists gave you that little sliver of hope that, through the physical therapy and all that you maybe regain a little or some movement in your legs. But that's, when a bullet severs your spinal cord, it's the damage is done. It's done deal. You're not gonna, wherever the bullet did its damage in the spinal cord, it affects everything at that point down of the spinal cord. So you're pretty much done. The higher up it does damage, the more body parts are affected by it. So, as far as the damage. So I don't know it was, it did some extensive damage. So he basically now was in that wheelchair. He needed help. My grandmother was basically caregiver. She basically took care of him. He was a grown man, meaning he didn't need no help for, but just for the basics, like going to the restroom, like taking showers and getting dressed,
getting something to eat,
and getting meals, and all that had to been done for it. All had to be done for him. Couldn't do it for himself.
Being driven around.
Although he basically bought a car, had the hand controls installed on them. The hand controls meaning there were levers. There was two levers. One lever controlled the accelerator and another lever controlled the brake.
Wow.
So since he couldn't move his legs, but he had enough strength, gripping strength in his hands to control the levers, he was able to drive.
Wow.
So my dear Willie, he actually drove. I wish I knew the car he had, but it was a big 4-door car that was kind of like a Ford, like a big 4-door. But I forgot what model it was. But he drove. He needed help to get in and out of the seat. Like when I would drive him or he would drive, I would help him in the car. We had this special wood sliding board that we put between the wheelchair and the car, where he would I would grab him from his upper arms, his shoulders, and slide him down into the car, and then vice versa, slide him back into the wheelchair, in and out of the car. And whether he drove his own car or I drove my truck, same thing. Same process. So after that, he always needed help. Like I said, it's tough when you need help to go to the restroom, take showers, get dressed.
Every day.
Every day. So, you got to give my grandmother a lot of credit for that, because she did that. And then, the crazy part too is he ended up moving away when he found his girlfriend. Her name was Mary at the time, and they rented a little house in actually the city of Cudahy, or Bell. And they lived for a while, and basically she took care of him, for however long they were together. And then, he ended up back at my grandmother's house until he basically passed away from, the consequences of just his health, got deteriorated of being, because your body, wasn't meant to be sitting in a wheelchair, for 16 years or longer. So your body starts developing sores, and, internally it starts not functioning properly, and you have to face the consequences over time. And he basically succumbed to his
injuries,
the major injury that took his life 16 years later.
So basically, that dude committed first-degree murder. He did, because Steel Willie didn't initially die, but over the span of almost 2 decades, the bullets that hit him literally rotted his body from the inside out. And that's first-degree murder. I mean, he didn't die right away, but that man actually murdered Theo.
Well, you could see it that way, but I mean,
that's what happened. How didn't it?
The murder would have been if he would have killed him right there and then. Willie was a survivor, so that didn't kill him. The man didn't kill him.
Then and there.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, that man didn't kill Willie. He just basically, he lived. He had the will to live, the strength to keep on living, and he did for 16 years. So that's amazing there. A lot of people would have they would have died on the spot. They would have died right that day on that street in Boyle Heights if they weren't as strong as Steel Willie.
Well, I think that's great, but still, anyway, fuck whoever that was. Fucking, Because I just think, like, I guess that still doesn't even register in my mind how like that whole fucking thing even happened. Like, just even thinking about it now.
But the thing is that even though he was affected by it, wasn't able to walk, was in a wheelchair, you know, but Uncle Willie still functioned, you know, to however normal extent he could function, meaning he still had his friends, he would still go out, you know, go out, hang out, go back to the neighborhood. He was always going back and forth to the neighborhood because that's where his family, his friends were, you know. So he still lived his regular life and did the things he wanted to, but it was just limited to being in that wheelchair, you know.
Do you think that Theo Willie or any of his friends like went to go see the guy again or anything like that, or was it a done deal after Theo Willie got shot?
That I don't know. I don't know if there was any real retaliation. I have no idea if they did or not. But
I hope they did.
That's a sidebar note. That's something I don't know about. It could have happened. It was possible, but I don't know. I don't know for a fact.
Yeah, that's crazy. Do you remember like how it was before and after that happened? Like how he was before he was in a wheelchair versus like after?
No, well, before he was really active, you know, he was really active, a young, you know, any young 19, 20-year-old man was pretty active, you know, doing whatever you want, you know, running around and just having a good old time. And afterwards, shoot, you know, it's tough. Now you need help for everything, basically. It changes your whole world. It's horrible to be in that chair, but, you know, that was his reality, you know. You know, unfortunately, that's basically his consequences of that day, you know. But he lived. The point I'm trying to say is he was strong enough and had the will to live, you know, for 16 more years after that day he got shot. It was just the strength and determination and the perseverance to live that got him through that.
How different do you think his life would have been without his gang, positive and negative?
Well, without his gang, he probably, you know, he probably would have had his family, you know, maybe a wife and kids. You know, he did have a son, little Willie, and, you know, he could have probably had more kids, definitely. So his life would have been different, you know, whether he got married or not, or had more kids or not, or went to college or not, or just got a job, but he'd still be alive today. I'm pretty sure he would have still been alive today.
That's crazy. I always want to, it's crazy, like, because, you know, he has, my Theo Little Willie, but, like, it's just fucking funny, like, he's Little Willie, but, like, he's a grown-ass man, and, like...
Oh, yeah, we always call him Little Willie, but I don't know how old he is. He's probably, I think, close to 40 years old now.
Yeah, that's crazy. We got to definitely get him on the podcast and chop it up with him.
Yeah.
Because he's a producer, right? Doesn't he make beats?
Oh, I have no idea.
Is that him or is that Theo Edgar?
I don't know.
It's one of them. I want to say it's Theo Little Willie.
I don't know. You got to ask him.
Yeah, definitely gotta reach out to my uncle for that one. Let's see. What was he like as he aged?
As he aged, well, like I said, as he aged, he died at 36. That's still young, you know. So, you know, he was still a young man when he passed away. So, as he was going into his 30s, he just basically, you know, would tell me, hey, you know, like, you know, this, you know, you stay away from this stuff. It's not for you. But he would still take me around. I knew what was going on, what was going around, who he was hanging out with, but he didn't want that for the younger generation. So he made it a point to tell me, And I didn't want that for myself because, you know, that's not a good life. You know, you get fooled into thinking that this is your family and this now, the neighborhood life has now, you know, it's your family and it replaces your own family. That's, you know, that's a distorted reality, you know. But for the most part, Theo Willie did the best he could after the fact, under the circumstances. He lived a good life, you know, as good as much as possible. That wheelchair didn't stop him, you know, because he still, you know, went out back to the neighborhood, hung out with his friends, did the things he did even before he got shot in his neighborhood. He was always going back and forth to the neighborhood, you know, and doing the things he liked doing, and that didn't stop him. And you know, and then after I think he started settling down when he met his girlfriend and they started living together, so he went less and less to the neighborhood, and he basically settled down. You know, he was basically a family man after that. So when he passed away, he was basically like a family man, you know, at the time. You know, 36 years old. You know, that's enough of some people, you know, are doing the neighborhood gang banging all their life, but there comes a point in time in people's life you make a decision. You know, some people take longer than others to decide this life is, you know, I've been there, done that, and let's move on, you know. But my Uncle Willie, deep down, I think he had moved on, you know, well, when he reached his 30s, that, you know, that's it, you know. But he knew he was from the neighborhood, and he had his friends, and his friends would come down and visit him. So, you know, that was the connection. His friends, his homies, they never, you know, they always came by, so they never forgot about him. And I'm not talking about all of them from the neighborhood. I'm just talking about the close friends, homies that he had, you know, like Eddie, the guy who got shot with him that day, and a handful of others. And, you know, everybody else, you know, the neighborhood's big, but everybody else, you know, it's like they hear, oh, this homie got shot or whatever, and that's it. It's just a conversation piece, and that's it, you know. That's just reality. It's only the people that are closest to you, even within the neighborhood, are the ones that care for you, and that's if they care for you after you know, everything goes down. But he had a handful of friends that they hung out and stayed in touch and looked out for each other, you know, up until the day he died. So had he been alive today, he would have been in December. This December he would be 64 years old.
Wow.
In December.
And when he passed away, were there like a lot of his old neighborhood friends there to see him? Or or was it like only like a few of them?
There's only a few, only the very close ones, maybe a handful of them that went to his funeral services.
And do you remember that? Like, when was that? Like 94, 95?
That was in 94.
94? Yeah, because I just did the math in my head.
It was in 94. I think it was probably like when he passed away, it was either June or July. So I remember because it was pretty hot.
It was a hot summer?
It was a hot summer.
And he's with my great grandma and grandpa, right?
Yeah, they're neighbors. They're all buried right there, right next door to each other in Oakdale Cemetery. So they're neighbors. They're buried side by side.
Definitely got to bring him something next time we see Grandpa, which should be coming up soon, right? Like, we should probably go see Grandpa.
I do for a visit to the cemetery.
Oh, yeah. And last question, how do you think Theo Willie impacted your life?
Well, he impacted my life only by wanting a better life for me and the younger generation, and not following into that lifestyle. And although I was aware of it, I knew that from a very early age that lifestyle I didn't want that lifestyle. So I think he shined a light on it, so whereas it didn't appeal to me. I knew about it. I lived within it. My family, my Uncle Willie was a big part of it. And I think that there just made me realize that, I don't need to follow into his footsteps. I don't need to become a gang member or claim the neighborhood, because, nothing good comes out of it. So I think by following his lead and example, I definitely didn't want to become no gang member or claim any neighborhood, for that matter. So it basically made me realize that life wasn't for me and never was meant for me. And I never went into it. I just didn't even cross my mind. So I think that was the good shining example that learned through his experience, his lifestyle, that that wasn't for me. So I owe him for that. We never had that conversation, but I owe him big time for that.
That was what it was.
That's what it was, because I could have easily followed his footsteps into the gang life, but I basically followed his lead into not turning to that lifestyle. So thank God, and God bless Uncle Willie, champ from White Fence.
And on that note, that was a great note right there. And on that note, this is the God's Hour.
Yes.
Rest in peace, deal with it.
That's right. All right, son.
Max was the turnout of my lifestyle. Smoking green, blowing white clouds to build the blue skies. Conversating with the gods by my wildflower, to let them know that it's the God's hour. This love's the never-ending saga. Gods by my wildflower, to let them know that it's the God's hour. This love's the never-ending saga. Gods by my wildflower, to let them know that it's the God's hour. This love's the never-ending saga. Gods by my wildflower, to let them know that it's the God's hour. This love's the never-ending saga. Walk through the sands of times like Gara. On the other side of that gad is karma. You wet Prada, the devil like inside your box now, while the angels fly over my headstone.